Good evening, everyone. Happy Halloween. I'm here to tell you a story about my Taiwanese culture. So, I am absolutely fascinated by Taiwanese heritage and Taiwanese culture, and I'm especially fascinated by Taiwanese folklore, particularly a story called The Demise of the Chinese Yo Yo. Now, if you don't know, a Chinese yo yo is not like your typical yo yo. It's not a toy where you put it on one string and go up and down with it. It's instead a toy that looks like an hourglass, and you take two sticks with a string going through the two of them and then bouncing on them and trying to toss them and catch it and do all these other cool things with it. Really fun toy. However, this toy is like the Western doll. During Halloween, it's got these negative connotations to it, and I can explain why. In Western culture, it's called the Diablo, and the Taiwanese people they don't like that name because it sounds like the demon or the devil, and this story signifies why it's being called that. Back in the 50s, during the Great Retreat, you had the Chinese communists and the nationalists, and they were going head to head with Mao Zedong in the middle. One evening, there was a raid on the Sichuan province with the communists invading the nationalists. And even though the nationalists were prepared for this raid, the communists smashed them. They destroyed them. And a lot of the nationalists ended up retreating back to Taiwan, including my great grandfather, who was actually a general. The communists didn't care about any sort of life for the nationalists. They went in with no sympathy and no mercy at all. And they crushed anyone who opposed them. Some of those people were kids. And one of the people who ended up dying in that village raid was a prodigy. And this was a prodigy with a Chinese yo-yo. He was able to toss it, he was able to twirl it, he was able to do all these sorts of tricks. But he ended up being killed in the raid. Not all the people involved were killed or fled. Some of them actually hid, and they were able to bring some items back to Taiwan. One of those items was a green Chinese yo-yo, one that belonged to the prodigy. And they were super fascinated by it because it had not been touched at all. It looked like it had a dent in it. No scratches, no nothing. So they thought that they could bring it back to their kids, which they did. But as soon as their kids started playing with it, they started disappearing. And people were trying to figure out why. Those who lived in that Sichuan province village then realized that prodigy had manifested itself into the Chinese yo-yo and possessed it into this demonic form. And that was what was causing these children to disappear into the underworld. So they did their best to try to get rid of this Chinese yo-yo. They tried to burn it, they tried to smash it, they tried to, do whatever they could to it, but it wouldn't go away. So they ended up just throwing it away with the hopes of no one finding it ever again. Well, the lower class Taiwanese people ended up finding it, and they ended up passing it along to their children, who then passed it along to their children. The problem was people continued to disappear, and since they didn't know, it just kept happening and they couldn't figure out why. Now you might be wondering, how could this yo-yo do something like this? There's no context to it. Well, I happen to be okay at the Chinese yo-yo, so I would love to show you all. However, in order for me to show you, I'm going to need to stand up. Alright, so this is my Chinese yo-yo. See how it looks like the hourglass with the two sticks and the string? That's what my Chinese yo-yo looks like. To use a Chinese yo-yo, you have to slide the sticks up and spin the yo-yo so that it gets a lot of momentum. Letting the yo-yo spin out naturally, so when it stops spinning naturally, that's when the kids start disappearing. And that's because the spin of the yo-yo translates to the orbit of the moon. So the Taiwanese, they go by the lunar calendar, and they show a lot of importance to the moon. So if the yo-yo spin were to stop, then it would be like the moon stopping. And that's what bridges the reality with the underworld. And that's why people disappear. There's actually another way to summon the devil, and that is called 蜘蛛, which means a spider. And it's a trick that looks like this. So you get the yo-yo to spin, you're going to undo it, and you're going to wrap the string around the stick like this and through like this so it looks like a web. You're going to toss it up, and then you catch it. Like that. Now, that trick is extremely dangerous because that represents the spider jumping out and releasing its venom at you. And the user will end up dying a couple minutes later because it's so venomous. So the user wouldn't have a lot of time after that. So that's kind of how, the Chinese yo-yo works and the lore behind why people were disappearing with the Chinese yo-yo. But yeah, that's the amazing folklore of Taiwan. I absolutely love the Chinese yo-yo. I think that whenever I'm stressed out, I'll pick it up and I'll start giving it a whirl. It'll ease the nerves, and I absolutely love looking at it spin. It's absolutely mesmerizing. I want to show you guys how just amazing it looks. It's just so fascinating. See, let me get it going for you. Like, I could just look at this all day long, and I would have no problem with it. Look at that. See how nice it looks? Look at that spin.